Hey Kings, and welcome back to the Augustus Maximus channel. Today, we'll be playing Empire Total War, with a bit of a twist. We're playing Empire Total War, the Minor Factions Revenge mod, as Greece. Now that's only the first twist. The second twist is that we're playing in the late campaign, which I've actually never played before, which is quite a conundrum because I'm mostly used to playing vanilla Empire Total War, and even though I've had I think it's like 600 hours of playtime, I have never played this mod and the late campaign as a start. Usually your campaigns finish by 1770, and so this is going to be an entirely new one, and I have especially never played as Greece, which is in quite the predicament. And because of all those twists, I decided that it would be only appropriate to set some sort of goal, but to keep the difficulty of both the game and goal a little bit on the normal side of things. So I'm playing on a normal campaign difficulty because this is an entirely new thing for me. However, the battle difficulty is going to be set on hard because I think that's a little bit that would be a bit too cheap to set the battle difficulty to normal as well, because obviously it's not a new game and we've all played it at least to some degree, and I think that's going to be relatively okay. Now, because we're playing in the late campaign, there are a bunch of changes. First of all, well, obviously Greece has been released. Second of all, Scotland is here, which is quite an interesting sight to see, and yeah, France is under Napoleon, which it's a strange one, but it's there, and yeah, so that's happening, and also because of all those things, the United States of America are here. However, France still owns Louisiana, which is quite interesting. But the United States is here, or the United States are here. The country of the United States of America is present within this campaign, which is going to make for quite an interesting dynamic within the New World, because you don't usually see this. You usually, in vanilla, for something like this to occur, you'd actually have to play as the United States to get a fully formed, basically, coastline dominated by the United States, which is quite interesting. Also, Mexico is here, and the entire Spanish, almost the entire Spanish colonial empire within the New World is being sort of torn apart. The British obviously still own Canada, however, Quebec is here, which is also quite interesting and would make for quite an interesting campaign, I think. But for today and for this campaign, we are playing as Greece. Now, obviously, when it comes to the goal that I have in mind, it is to reconquer the entirety of the Eastern Roman Empire, or the eastern portion of the Roman Empire, which in later times was just called the Empire of the Romans, obviously. That Byzantium thing, that's basically fake history, fake news within history, and we're not going to call it that at all. So the border regions should look like basically the entirety of the Balkans, or basically Sarajevo, Belgrade, Sofia, Istanbul, which is soon going to be called something completely different, and then obviously the entirety of the Ottoman Empire. Maybe we'll actually let Sarajevo and Serbia go. In the worst case scenario, if maybe Austria goes for them, and well, we have until 1860, and because I set the rule to six turns per year, it's going to be quite a long campaign if we actually go for the absolute domination of the entire border region in the Balkans. And also we have to take into account that the borders within Empire Total War aren't accommodated to doing something like this. Whereas, for example, the border region between the Western and Eastern Roman empires during the 4th century, when the initial split happened, would be somewhere around this little area around here. So it's going to be up in the air whether we actually go for the Barbary states and Tripoli, or Tripolitana. And Tunis is also sort of a strange one because, well, if we go for Tripoli, might as well just dominate the entire northern African coast. So the initial goal I have in mind is obviously the reconquest of the Eastern Roman Empire, or at least the domination of a majority of Ottoman settlements. And from there, I do want to go to India. I want to sort of recreate the conquest of Alexander the Great. That would be quite an interesting one. So the combination of the two high points of Greece, I think would be appropriate for something like this, seeing as we only start with 2 cities. I think it's going to be quite an uphill battle, but since we have it set to normal, I think it should be relatively doable, and because we have such a long time to actually do this, I think it's going to be quite fine. Now, if we can't completely account for the northern provinces here, the Sarajevo and Belgrade provinces here, Serbia and Bosnia essentially. If the Austrians want to go for that, then fine. Maybe we'll find some sort of provinces somewhere else. For example, southern Italy and Malta could be interesting, because those were basically a part of the Eastern Roman Empire, or the Empire of the Romans during Justinian's rule, and we have the whole thing about reconquering Italy. So we could go for those borders. But we'll just have to see how things shape up, and those are basically the plans for this campaign. But obviously the first big foe is, the Ottoman Empire, who, during this period of time, is at war with Russia, and they have very terrible relationship with Austria. So we'll probably see the Austrian intervention quite soon. However, the terrible relationship with Russia is actually quite beneficial for us, because we are an ally with Russia, and we could definitely benefit from the Russians taking a big chunk out of the Ottomans, for example, when it comes to Moldavia. We really don't want that territory. Theoretically, we could go for it. However, it's not within the scope of my sort of goal at all. If we conquer more territory, then so be it. But I would really like the Russians to take Moldavia, because we're probably going to stay allied with the Russians for quite a long time, seeing as we have the same religion, and they don't have many allies within the same religion group. I don't think they have any allies within the same religion group. Actually, we have the... well, that's us. That's us. So it's just us and the Russians, which is, that's going to be quite interesting. We're going to have the big bear to the east as an ally, which is, that's sort of a historic friendship. I can see that happening, and after we conquer the Eastern Roman Empire, there's going to be, that's going to be a nice dynamic. So, want the Russians to take over Moldavia, or at least keep the Ottomans busy for a while before we have the time to strike. Now, as you can see, we have no army, 2 provinces, and no available ministers. So it's going to take quite a long time. However, we do have 22,500 in the bank, which we can use, and we should set up some sort of trade. They're already trading with the Russians, so that's completely okay. Let's check attitudes. Who likes us? Portugal likes us, which is actually quite surprising. But the Portuguese do like us. The issue with that is that the Spanish always go to war with Portugal, and it's more than likely that they're going to take them over. So maybe we go with France. Because France has... they don't have any ill intentions towards us at all, basically. They have a bunch of allies in the Americans and within the Western Roman... within the former Western Roman Empire regions, but within Western Europe. So they really shouldn't be defeated anytime soon. They do have a powerful navy to cover the Mediterranean if we were to... well, basically they can annoy the Barbary states, essentially. So maybe we would go to would be smart to trade with France. However, another potential partner is Austria, because they're so close. We could justify this sort of trade, because the Barbary states or the Ottomans were they to raid our trading ships or trading lines. They wouldn't really be able to do it too much, because it's such a short coastline. It's such a short path that it's hard to see the Ottomans doing much. And also we have to take into account the Austrians really want Bosnia, both historically obviously, but they're probably going to declare war on the Ottomans, and so they were probably going to take both either Sarajevo or Belgrade, or both of them. If they take none of them, that would be quite a surprise, because the Ottomans are in decline during this time period, sort of famously, and so it would be quite a surprise if they don't take anything. So maybe the Austrians. It's just a sort of a gamble. I don't really... actually, yeah, they agreed. That's surprising. We're friendly with them now. Now that's very good, because the Russians and the Austrians do have sort of a friendly relationship going on. At least they used to have during this time period. So yeah, we'll see that. We'll see that going on. Now, also, what I want to do is this shipyard. This shipyard here, when it comes to trade, obviously want to get as much money flowing in as possible, because we're a small country and we need a lot of cash to be able to, well, fight someone like the Ottomans. And as Greece, that's quite a conundrum. You really do want a lot of cash, otherwise you're going to go bankrupt. And since we're playing Greece, that's quite a scary one. So we're going to destroy the shipyard. We're not using it for anything at all. We're not going to be building a navy. So you might as well destroy this dockyard here. But I'm not entirely sure, because the dockyard is actually well built up, and potentially we could use it if we want to invade Africa or southern Italy. So maybe actually this shipyard here, well, that's sad. But we have the commercial port here. We do have the port here, but I think I'll keep this one. However, having two of them is not going to do us any. Well, it's not going to be beneficial to us in the least, so I'm going to destroy this one and rebuild it. Rebuild it into a trading port as well, so we can trade with more nations, so we can have more money. That's basically what this is about. It's about money. Now, as for the army is going to be quite an interesting one, because we do have access to a bunch of Ottoman units, and yeah, well, that's that's not exactly what I'm going to be doing here. Instead, we're going to be recruiting a Western-style army, basically the style of, well, Britain, France, Germany, Austria, even Russia to a certain degree. So, yeah, we're going to go with a Western-style army, and we're going to mostly ignore the Ottoman units, because obviously we were birthed from the Ottoman Empire during this time period, and we do have the access to their units, but we're not going to do anything with them in the least. What's actually interesting is that we have access to some of the better line infantry right off the bat, the expatriate infantry, which, well, it does say they're irregulars. They actually have higher stats and lower upkeep than the line infantry, and they also cost less, so we're going to go with them, because, well, why not? Might as well, right? And we're also going to have some provincial cavalry recruiting. I'm hoping for at least two full stack armies before we actually go to war with the Ottoman Empire, and that should be quite swell. So let's just upgrade a majority of these things, because we really do need the cash to eventually obviously go to war with the Ottomans. And you know, let's build a governor's mansion actually, because we really do want that. The happiness thing is going to be an issue, maybe a little bit, but if we build a great museum, that should counterbalance it to a certain degree, I think. At least to a certain degree, it's going to be much better to build the great museum right away, right? It does go, you know, it does provide a little bit of gold as well, so why not? I think it's going to be okay. We won't be going into war with the Ottomans that soon either, because we are actually trading with them and they do like us. So it's less than likely that they're going to initiate the war. We are going to have to, well, we're going to have a very free hand in deciding when to strike against the Ottomans. And yeah, so after we build everything up, I don't think I can build anything else. No, I can't. Okay, that's going actually quite, yeah, let's not deal with that. Now, another issue, because there isn't enough of them, another issue is that we have no buildings to research with. So, on the top of only having two provinces, being small, having no army, and, well, actually that income is quite good, but on top of all of those issues, we are sort of lacking in research. We are at this period, during this period of time, we have the same exact research as the Ottoman Empire, because we were just released from them, you know, theoretically. But then the game sense, we have the same amount of researchers they have. But compared to, for example, Great Britain, sort of a generic Western group, they do have more. Technology available. Let's just try and do something here. Offer payment and. Rejected, okay. I don't think we're going to have, one example, compared to Russia, we have the same technology as well. So we are sort of, you know, generically within the same group as these nations, and that's actually okay at the beginning. However, we're going to very quickly fall behind. Let's check with Austria. Just in case. No, okay, no surprises there. But what this means is that, for example, there's a school in, I think there's a school in Bulgaria. Yeah, there's a school in Bulgaria. So, one this gets me into the battle plans, because obviously we do have to have some sort of battle plan when when initially going to war with the Ottoman Empire, because we're a weaker neighbor. Well, they will be busy. We do have to have some sort of sensible battle plan when dealing with them. And one of them could be just, I don't know, striking Istanbul, or, soon to be Constantinople, striking their capital, and then sweeping through the Balkans. But however, that does leave sort of Athens unprotected, were we to just march on in. They could maybe go around, so that's why I'm hoping to have at least 2 full stack armies, or at least 1 full stack and 1 half stack. That would be optimal, I think. Another strategy is blocking this pathway right here, so we're doing the 300 style thing, because these forests are impassable. You can't go through them, and so, at least I think they should be impassable. So we might just have one army standing here, and the other army marches around the Balkans, conquering everything, or at least what's left anyway, after the Austrians and the Russians have their way with this region. And yeah, just blocking this path, letting the other army go around, capturing the school right here, and then marching both armies on their capital. In Empire Total War, the enemy never does naval invasions. I'm not necessarily too afraid of that. However, it might, be a bother later on. Their navies, however, aren't usually that strong, and they're probably going to be destroyed by either the Austrians have a small navy here, so maybe, but maybe even by the Russians. We'll have to see how things shape up. And so, that's another plan. Another plan would be to have a bit of a navy, going, and then basically invading with a naval force, just directly invading their capital with an army. That's sort of self-evident. Or invading Egypt is another strategy, just having 2 fronts going on, one from Egypt and one from Greece itself. That's another strategy. However, I do like the tactic of just going for the capital and then sweeping the Balkans, or holding this little road right here, basically this little pass here, making it impassable, and then sweeping the Balkans with the other army. That's another tactic we could go for. So we have a bunch of options here that are available to us. Potential options, obviously. We'll have to see how the Austrians, how the Russians, and the Ottomans, of course, themselves deal with the issue. However, at the beginning, I think it's safe to assume that we'll be doing nothing for a while and just sitting on our hands, because we have 2 provinces and no army and no cash. So one thing we could actually do is start recruiting some sort of navy, because I really want to get on the trade node game, because this is where a majority of your cash in Imperial War is going to come in. These little trading nodes, and obviously East Indies, the Madagascar Straits, Ivory Coast, and Costa Brazil. This is where all the money is made, as well as these 2 minor regions within America. And some of the islands are actually quite good. That's where all the cash comes in. So we'll have to see what happens. But the Ottoman Empire itself, while it's large, it does have some good cities here, but a majority of these regions aren't the best way to have a lot of money. Just conquering a lot of territory isn't the best way to make money in Empire Total War. For example, the Netherlands tends to be really rich in this game, but they usually have only 1 to 2 cities in the mainland of Europe. But they do have quite a lot of the East Indies trading nodes covered, which is, or just any trade node covered. But I think the usually goes for the East Indies. I'm not entirely sure. So we might actually start building some sort of navy, just for the time being. Let's check our Minister for Navies, and he is okay. He's okay. He's not great, but he's relatively okay. Okay, I guess. So we might want to start building some decent ships. We do have a relatively decent income. That's gonna go way down when we actually start building, or start seeing the armies getting built. But for the time being, let's start with a 6 rate. It's gonna take 2 turns. It's not that expensive. It doesn't cost that much to upkeep. Let's actually check how much it costs. 120. That's roughly the same as, yeah, a half of a regular line infantry unit or division, or whatever you want to call it. So that's, I think, relatively okay. Yeah, I think it's relatively okay. So, yeah, let's start building that ship, and that covers basically the first turn of this game. So let's go on to the second turn, and let's see what happens. Hopefully nothing terrible, but yeah, let's go. Hopefully nothing terrible, but the setup and the planning phase, and also the theoretical stuff behind our plans and everything like that, I really wanted to get that out of the way, because when starting as a minor power and going to war with a major power right out of the gate, you really want some planning going on, and you really want to take into account the other great powers around you, because, well, that's just how you have to play when you're playing a small country. You really have to ally with someone and hope for the best, essentially. But yeah, the Austrians are on the move, and one thing that's really interesting about Empire to Lore as well, when well, playing anyone or during any time period, is that the AI always has these events, where they, on the second turn, on the third turn of the game, a bunch of major powers just start fighting, and I think that's really interesting, because we can really use this chaos, especially, of course, in context of the Ottoman Empire. Really want to have them well, distracted with a bunch of wars. That's going to help us. And yeah, that's basically it. It also helps that we are raiding my trade ports. That's interesting, but it's mostly because of Russia, obviously. But I hope the Russians do something about it, because I do want that money. I do want the money from that trade, because that's really helpful. The French trade, hopefully that's going to be good enough. But I think the French are actually growing in size. I think they're... I have to check who the French are war with again, because I'm not entirely sure. Obviously there was a war with Britain, Denmark and Norway, and who's it? That's just our units. Sweden, Denmark, that's to be expected. Poland, Lithuania, and Austria. That's actually quite interesting, because in this mod Poland, Lithuania is actually quite weak. And Poland, Lithuania, Russia, Poland, Lithuania, Russia. Okay, so bye Poland, Lithuania. Essentially, this is the time period when they're just gonna get torn apart. Russia's probably gonna get Vilnius. And Prussia maybe will get Warsaw. We'll have to see what happens, but there's going to be some interesting borders as well. Hopefully Russia gets a majority of these, because I'm really not planning on attacking Russia at all. Austro-Ottoman Empire, there we go. Austro-Ottoman Empire, there we go. So it's actually scripted. They go to war with each other, which is actually good for us. So for the time being, I think just continuing to build up our strength. Yeah, let's get a trading port so we can trade more. And yeah, not much money left over from all of that. Any infrastructure to be built? No. Well, this is going to be it, basically, for a while, which is going to sit on our hands. Any ministers available? What is this? Army management, actually. Treasury management. Now, what do we value more, army or treasury? A lot of pious people around, though. Okay, pious. This guy's not pious at all. And pious. Okay, so a lot of pious people. This is interesting. A lot of pious people. So was Greece just again pious? Was Greece just like really religious during this period of time? Might be. I mean, Europe in general is really religious. So there we go. So these ministers, what do we value more? In this period of time, we don't actually have a big army. So actually putting this guy in treasury would be more beneficial. This guy is good at what? Management, -1 to treasury, so we can't just switch this around. This guy's just pious. So let's try doing something like this. Actually, any of these guys. This one's good. -1 to treasury. Okay, not a good. Apparently, Greece doesn't have a lot of people who are very good at treasury administration, which is surprising. Okay, so let's try switching this around and then just doing this. Okay. Okay, I think that should work, because right now we don't necessarily need that army guy around, or, you know, for him to be really good at managing the army, but it's going to be very helpful for him to be doing, for us to be earning a lot of money. Or at least a relatively decent amount of money, so let's slap that guy there. I think they even have the Ottoman voice lines, which is actually going to be quite awkward when we eventually take out this area. But there we go. There we go. So everything seems to be okay. Anyone we can trade? Oh, actually, policies. I think we want to tax the rich, tax the nobility a little bit. It goes for -0.8. Do we actually? No, we don't actually see any sort of real increase. So let's just do something like this. We might actually lower the taxes. Lower the taxes for the lower classes. It doesn't really change that much. No, it doesn't. So For the time being, we might want to lower the taxes just to get some growth in. Slightly reduces population growth in a region. Eh? Oh, just slightly reduces. Okay, so if we tax them to 0, which is going to be very better. Okay, it doesn't actually change all that much. So we're gonna have a lot of growth within the area. If we just reduce the taxation completely, only by 1,000. Only by 1,000. That's actually not that bad. So we're gonna have a lot of growth. Oh, minus 2% per town to town wealth for region. Okay. But it's only minus 8. Oh, actually, so we're mostly gaining our money from, well, the buildings and town wealth. So think maybe just for the initial growth, this is going to be okay. Once we get a lot of armies going, we are eventually going to have to increase the taxation to, you know, a more reasonable amount. In relation to obviously our size and the army and everything. So this is civilian logger Indian men. Well, let's hold on the Indian men for a while there because we don't necessarily need it right now. So let's lower the taxation initially. After we get the armies rolling and the pocket becomes a bit, you know, empty, we're gonna have to change that a bit. But okay, I guess I clicked this too many times then. Okay, then we have a bunch of cats now. Well, that's nice, I guess. Yeah, this was like an Easter egg in Empire Total War. I just didn't realize I did it. Okay, then I just like to look at the government management quite a bit because, well, that's me, haha. But, hey, there we go. So, I think we'll be wrapping up this episode quite soon here. Just want to see what actually happens around the world, especially Europe. Okay, so the Austrians are fighting the Ottoman Navy, which is good, and the Austrian navies, I guess they're better. Which, yeah, the Austrians have the standard European navy, while the Ottomans have some sort of their special naval group, so that's going to be quite interesting. And the European navies tend to be really powerful during this time period, or just in this game in general, so that just happens. And the Austrians are only fighting the Polish and the Ottomans. Now, I don't want the Austrians to completely dominate the Ottomans, obviously, but I want to both Russia and the Austrians sort of sap strength from the Ottomans bit by bit, so then we can march in and just have a nice sweep march through the entire empire. But I think that's going to be asking for a little too much. We'll have to see how things pan out. But yeah, actually, reducing the taxes is going to be relatively okay. Hopefully, it's going to help. Obviously, we need growth. We need the growth to have more cities. Alliance broken, Great Britain, Portugal. That's not usually what happens. Great Britain, Austria, okay. That's recruitment, construction, very good. So the money's actually, well, it's going down a bit, but it's actually relatively, it's going, you know, relatively decently, all things considered. And okay, so more armies for the, well, more units for the army, obviously. And there we go. Happiness, nobility, that's always nice. Prestige and happiness. Foreign master. Okay, so we have a new minister available who he's good at management in general. So this guy is good at nothing. Head. Diplomatic relations. Navy. Don't really need a navy thing right now. The justice guy is actually relatively okay. Thankfully. Pious, status quo, happiness, clamor for reform. That's always good. And we need this guy. Let's just slam him in the army. Because, well, that's the only thing we're really building right now. And that's going to be relatively... I'm quite sure that I did not set to recruit these guys. Now, I'm quite sure I did not want to recruit the Janissaries in the least. Okay, so that's probably a glitch. Maybe I fiddled around with the unit list or something and it just shifted. Maybe it's just a big mistake, I don't know. But there we go. Again, nothing much yet, and yeah, I think let's build another 4th rate. Want a 4th rate? Let's not get too ambitious. Maybe a few light galleys for the time being. Just to have some, well, basically during auto results. I'm not really planning on playing any naval battles. I'm really terrible at those, but maybe a few light galleys. One here and there would be actually quite nice. And or a brig. What's better, a brig or a light galley? The brig, less firepower, less firepower, more range actually, better accuracy, better reloading skill. So it's just a smaller but more precise ship. So it has less firepower, but everything else seems to be just better. Okay, let's just go for the brig then. It's not that much of an increased investment. Well, it's usually roughly double. That's okay, I think. A double of a small number isn't all that great either. So, there we go. Yeah, all in all, I think that's it for the first episode. Thanks, Kings, for watching, and yeah, see you next time.